The first light of dawn painted the mountain peaks in muted gold, a soft blaze against the endless white that stretched beneath the sky. Snowflakes drifted down like whispered secrets, landing on pine branches and the frozen river below, their delicate weight bending limbs to the earth. Clara Redhawk trudged through the knee-deep snow, each step leaving an impression that the wind would erase by the time she turned back. Her moccasins were wet, her cheeks flushed from the sting of winter, but she did not pause. Survival had been a constant tutor since the world had turned against her, and she had learned to endure quietly, with the dignity that grief could not take. Yet, beneath her calm, a question lingered. Who would summon a stranger into such harsh terrain, expecting anything more than work? The thought curled like smoke around her heart, making her cautious, even as curiosity pricked at the edges of her resolve. The cabin rose from the snow like a secret, its chimney tracing a slender plume of smoke into the frozen sky. Clara slowed, noting the sturdy logs, the hand-hewn shutters, and the soft light flickering behind the frosted window-panes. She believed herself hired for labor, tasked with mending, chopping, perhaps tending to the simple comforts of a solitary man. When the door creaked open, her breath caught. A man emerged, tall, solid as the surrounding pines, his dark hair dusted with snow, his eyes unreadable pools of storm-lit gray. Elias Stone. His presence carried the weight of the mountains, his hands strong and scarred, his expression shaped by winters and solitude. She lifted her head, preparing her most careful smile, and offered the greeting of a professional, courteous but distant. He did not respond with words. Instead, he handed her a cup of tea, steam curling in the cold air, warmth seeping into her fingers before her heart could. It was an act so simple it disarmed her, yet beneath it she sensed intention. He was watching her, studying her in the same careful, silent rhythm she used to measure the world. She accepted the cup, though her lips trembled with an unspoken question. Who was this man, and why did his presence unsettle her as if the snow itself had leaned in to listen? Then he leaned close, so close that the scent of pine and firewood wrapped around her senses, and whispered words that would have shattered her preconceptions had they been spoken any other way. I chose you to be my wife. The world seemed to tilt. Snow fell in slow motion around them, muffling the forest, yet each flake became a pointed note in the symphony of disbelief and longing that surged within her. The first days passed with quiet tension, a dance of small gestures that meant more than any declaration could. She chopped firewood while he watched, silent and steady, never offering correction, only presence. She tended the cabin, laying the hearth with care, and he left tools within reach, always mindful, always there. Clara noticed the way he looked at her, not with ownership but with attention, as if observing a rare flower in bloom, careful not to disturb it yet unwilling to look away. Rumors traveled faster than the wind. Sheriff Caleb Thorne, a man whose loyalty to the town's prejudice had hardened into something near sacred, raised questions in the general store and on the roads, whispering suspicion that clung to her like frost on a windowpane. Others muttered, their eyes veiled with judgment, unsettled by the presence of a native woman in the midst of a rugged, white-dominated valley. Clara carried the weight silently, her pride pushing against shame, her heart wary, yet her curiosity toward Elias never waned. Winter deepened, and the valley surrendered fully to snow, which fell with quiet insistence, muffling the world outside the cabin. Elias and Clara shared the warmth of routine and survival, splitting wood, patching broken tools, tending the small fire with reverent care. Silence became their language. One evening, he passed her a scarf, its wool rough but comforting, draping it across her shoulders without a word. She wondered, not for the first time, why he gave so freely without demand, why his actions carried more truth than the harsh whispers of the town ever could. Her heart, trained by grief and isolation, fluttered against the cage of her caution. They moved around one another like two shadows in the glow of the hearth, their connection growing in quiet moments, unnoticed yet undeniable. The snowstorm came without ceremony, trapping them inside, forcing proximity that both terrified and delighted Clara. She watched the candlelight flicker across the walls, tracing patterns that seemed to dance with their unspoken words. Elias shared the tale of his solitary youth, the mountains that had raised him, the loneliness that had become familiar as the wind against the ridge. Clara spoke of family lost, of rejection, of the aching absence of belonging. Each story was a fragile bridge, each confession a thread weaving them together. When their hands brushed over the edge of a steaming pot, a spark passed quietly, settling deep in her chest. She dared not meet his eyes fully, afraid that she would betray the fragile control she had maintained for years. Yet, beneath the fear, a small, fierce joy took root. Time pressed on, as it always does, until the outside world intruded again. Sheriff Thorne arrived, flanked by townsfolk, accusations riding the wind like sleet. Their eyes were sharp, judgment heavy. Clara felt the sting of scrutiny, the familiar pull of doubt and shame. Yet Elias did not draw, did not speak harshly. Instead, he knelt in the snow, respecting the man and the law, demonstrating strength in quiet humility rather than force. Clara's heart swelled with admiration. She realized that courage could be gentle, love could be protective without domination. The sheriff's glare lingered, but something in his stance softened, a grudging acknowledgment of the bond between the two who faced the storm together. Days stretched into weeks, and the bond between Clara and Elias deepened, not through words, but through shared survival. They hunted together, repaired the cabin, and moved in rhythms that spoke of intimacy without the need for naming it. One night, as moonlight turned the snow into silver, Elias brushed a wisp of hair from Clara's cheek, lingering longer than necessity dictated. She did not pull away. She let herself feel the quiet strength of his touch, the unwavering steadiness of his gaze. Each gesture became a promise, unspoken yet profound. She began to trust not only him but herself, realizing that love was not a demand, but a choice, an accumulation of small, deliberate acts. Then came the moment that would define their winter. Elias led Clara to a ridge above the valley, snowflakes drifting around them like slow-falling stars. He knelt, not with fanfare, not with a speech crafted from town's expectations, but with the quiet certainty of a man who had chosen fully and irrevocably. "I chose you," he said, voice steady, carrying the weight of mountains and storms. "Not for work, not for convenience, but for life. Will you be my wife?" Clara felt tears sting her eyes, a mingling of awe and relief. She saw herself reflected in his steady gaze, a woman worthy of love, capable of trust, able to claim dignity despite the whispers of the world. She placed her hand upon his shoulder, letting the warmth of his presence settle like a hearth within her chest. Outside, the valley seemed to hold its breath, the snow shimmering as though the mountains themselves bore witness. Their marriage was simple, intimate. The snow was their witness, neighbors softened enough to observe respectfully from a distance. Clara wore a hand-woven shawl, Elias in his leather jacket, the two of them standing in the hush of falling snow, hands clasped. Their vows were unadorned, promising endurance, companionship, the quiet honor of being seen and held. They danced on the frozen river, the ice echoing laughter into the night, the stars glimmering above like blessings from another age. Clara felt a wholeness she had never dared imagine, a completeness born not from acceptance by the world, but from the recognition of love in its quietest, most authentic form. Elias felt the same, a peace settling over him like snow covering the jagged cliffs, steady, pure, final. Perhaps love, like snow, begins almost imperceptibly, falling silently, unnoticed until it blankets everything it touches. It gathers in corners, in small acts of grace, until one day it cannot be ignored, cannot be denied. Clara and Elias learned that dignity and tenderness are not opposites, they are the same snow, shaping the valleys of our lives, carving beauty from the harshest stone. And in their quiet cabin, surrounded by mountains and winter, they understood that life's coldest seasons carry within them the seeds of warmth, if only one dares to stay, to witness, and to trust. The wind swirled, whispering secrets of hope and endurance, but inside, where firelight danced upon shared hands and gentle smiles, the world was soft and hearts were at home. The snow settled, a hush falling across the mountains, and in that silence Clara and Elias stood together, hands intertwined, hearts synchronized with the rhythm of the land. And in that moment, the past's pain and the future's uncertainty seemed to melt away. If one listens closely, one might hear it, the quiet, enduring truth that love, when tended gently, survives every storm and every whisper of judgment.